It's funny. Usually when we buy a practical tool, we judge it entirely by its utility. Like, if you buy a hammer, you are buying it to hit a nail.
Right, exactly.
Or, if you buy a toaster, you just expect it to make toast. We don't really care if the hammer has this, perfectly polished, ethically sourced mahogany handle with intricate gold filigree.
Right. Nobody cares about the filigree on a hammer.
No. As long as the picture frame gets hung on the wall, the utility is the entire point. But then, you step into the world of language.
Yeah, and that's where it all falls apart.
Totally. You look at how we speak to each other, how we express our needs and our thoughts, and suddenly that logical, utility-first mindset just flies out the window. We become utterly obsessed with the mahogany handle.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
We start polishing the hammer and completely forget that there is, an actual nail waiting to be driven into the wall.
It is a massive cognitive blind spot. I mean, we completely lose sight of the objective. Communication basically transforms from a practical, everyday tool for human connection into this intricate, high-stakes performance.
Yeah, performance, like we're on stage.
Exactly. It becomes an aesthetic competition rather than a functional exchange of information.
Yeah.
And the anxiety that stems from that shift in perspective is just profound.
Oh, for sure.
It dictates how millions of people navigate their daily lives. It literally holds them back from engaging fully in their communities or, their workplaces.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the central conflict here is one that so many people face daily.
Yeah, it really is everywhere.
So to welcome you to the deep dive today, our mission is to unpack a brief but incredibly resonant excerpt from a source titled The Art of Clarity Over Accent Perfection.
Which is such a powerful title.
It is. And this comes from an English podcast centered on the theme, Why Your Accent Doesn't Matter, Focus on Communication. So our core mission today is to dissect this exhausting, relentless pursuit of sounding quote-unquote perfect versus the actual fundamental goal of communicating.
Right.
Because we have this bizarre societal standard where sounding like a native speaker, whatever that even means in an increasingly globalized world, is held up as the ultimate trophy.
Yeah, a trophy that doesn't really exist. The illusion of the native speaker is entirely fabricated anyway.
Right. Like, what does a native speaker even sound like?
Exactly. If you look at the sociolinguistics of it, there is no monolithic native accent for almost any major language. Someone from London sounds entirely different from someone from Glasgow.
Oh, completely different.
And they sound entirely different from someone from Texas or Sydney. Yet, adult language learners or even regional speakers who just, relocate to a new area, they torture themselves trying to hit a linguistic target that doesn't actually exist.
It's like chasing a ghost.
It really is. It's a finish line that constantly moves depending on who you were talking to.
Yeah.
So the text suggests that by chasing this illusion, we are sacrificing the very thing language was invented for, which is just conveying meaning from one mind to another.
I was thinking about this dynamic, and it brought a specific image to mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so striving for a perfect accent is like draining your life savings to buy a highly tuned $1 million sports car just to commute in gridlocked, stop-and-go city traffic every single day.
Wow, that captures the sheer impracticality of it perfectly.
Right.
You have this machine designed for one highly specific, idealized environment, and you're forcing it into the messy reality of the everyday.
Exactly. You are sitting in this aerodynamic marvel. It's got a V12 engine. It's painted custom cherry red. The leather is pristine.
Right, it's gorgeous.
And it might look flashy to the people sitting in the cars next to you. They might even be impressed for a fleeting second as you rev the engine. But it doesn't actually get you to your destination, which in our case is successful communication, any better or any faster than just a reliable everyday vehicle.
No, not at all.
In bumper-to-bumper traffic, you're moving at the exact same speed as the dusty 1998 station wagon in the lane next to you.
That's so true. And let's look at the mechanics of driving that sports car in that environment, because that is where the real damage happens.
Oh, the stress of it.
Yeah, think about the cognitive load. So cognitive load theory in psychology refers to the amount of working memory resources used by your brain at any given time.
Okay.
Our brains have a finite amount of processing power. When you are driving that pristine sports car through a pothole-filled city street, your cognitive load is just maxed out.
Because you're terrified of getting a scratch.
Exactly. You are calculating the distance to the bumper in front of you down to the millimeter. You are hyper-aware of every single sound the engine makes.
Right. You aren't listening to the radio. You aren't enjoying the scenery. You are just sweating bullets trying not to ruin the paint job.
And that perfectly mirrors the mental fatigue of trying to maintain an artificial standard of accent perfection during a casual conversation.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, if 80% of your brain's working memory is focused on the exact physical placement of your tongue against your teeth to produce a specific the or there or R sound.
Which
Well,
is exhausting just to think about.
it is, because you only have 20% of your cognitive bandwidth left for the actual conversation. You have less memory available to recall vocabulary.
Right.
You have less processing power to string together complex syntax. And most critically, you have almost zero bandwidth left to read the listener's facial expressions or body language.
Wow. So you were so worried about scratching the paint that you aren't even paying attention to the road?
Exactly.
Which means you crash. You literally cause a breakdown in communication because you were trying so hard to make the communication sound pretty.
Yep. The aesthetic ruins the function.
And, that cognitive load doesn't just make you mentally tired. Either it manifests as intense physical social anxiety.
It really does.
Let's transition to the specific, relatable scenario provided in the text. Take the case study about Bruce.
Ah, yes, Bruce.
The source material introduces this incredibly brief, yet universally recognizable scenario. Bruce is out at a store. He is talking to an employee or a cashier, and that person asks him to repeat himself.
A super common occurrence.
Right. But the text notes a very specific outcome. Bruce immediately feels embarrassed.
What's fascinating here is the precise emotional reaction highlighted. The source doesn't say Bruce was annoyed that the transaction took longer.
It doesn't.
It doesn't say he was confused. It explicitly points out his embarrassment. And to understand why that is so devastating, we have to look at the evolutionary biology of accents and how our brains process social interaction.
Okay, take us back.
So for early humans, the way you spoke was the ultimate shibboleth. It was the fastest, most reliable indicator of whether someone belonged to your tribe or was a hostile outsider.
Right, an in-group, out-group marker.
Exactly. Our brains evolved to be hypersensitive to vocal patterns because, historically, being identified as an outsider could mean exile or death.
Wait, so it's not just a casual feeling of, oops, I mumbled. It's an ancient alarm bell going off in the brain.
It is a literal neurological threat response.
Oh.
When Bruce is asked to repeat himself, his brain's amygdala, the fear center, interprets that interaction as a signal that he has been clocked as an outsider.
Oh, wow.
He has failed to sound like the in-group. This triggers social rejection anxiety, and neuroimaging studies show that the brain processes social rejection in the exact same neural pathways that it processes physical pain.
That is wild.
Yeah, embarrassment isn't just a mild discomfort. It is the brain's way of punishing you for potentially jeopardizing your social standing. Bruce has internalized the idea that a perfect accent is the baseline requirement for participation in society.
Right.
So any deviation from that, any moment where his speech requires a second attempt, is registered internally as a moral or personal failure.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Why is embarrassment the default emotion for Bruce in this exact scenario?
That's the core issue, isn't it?
Yeah, let's isolate the variables. If Bruce was at that same store and he spoke, and at that exact millisecond, a massive delivery truck drove by with its brakes, squealing the cashier would also say, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?"
Right, of course they would.
In that scenario, Bruce wouldn't feel a single ounce of embarrassment.
Not at all.
He wouldn't blush. He wouldn't feel the urge to apologize. He would just calmly repeat himself, maybe roll his eyes at the loud truck and move on.
Yeah, the miscommunication is externalized.
Exactly. It is the truck's fault. But because the miscommunication in the text is tied to his accent, he internalizes the failure. Are we conditioned to view repeating ourselves as a penalty rather than a normal part of conversation?
We absolutely are, because society has trained him to view his own voice as the loud, disruptive truck.
Oh, that's a sad way to think about it.
It is, but it's true. We view conversation as a performance with a strict grading rubric, and being asked to repeat yourself is viewed as a deduction of points. Bruce feels embarrassed because he is measuring himself against the impossible standard of accent perfection.
Right, he's taking a test.
He views the request to repeat himself as failing a test, rather than just a simple request for clarity. But look at the reality of human interaction. Even two people who share the exact same native accent, who grew up in the exact same house, they ask each other to repeat themselves constantly.
Yeah, like, what was that? Or, sorry, I zoned out for a second.
Exactly. It is a fundamental mechanic of spoken dialogue. It's the error correction code built into language.
So if the error correction code is a feature and not a bug, then why do we treat it like a fatal error message when it involves an accent?
Because of the anxiety feedback loop.
What's that?
Well, when Bruce feels that acute embarrassment, it triggers a physiological response. Adrenaline floods his system. And what happens when adrenaline hits? Your muscles tense up.
Right, fight or flight.
Exactly. This includes your diaphragm, your larynx, and your vocal cords. When your vocal cords tighten, your voice naturally pitches up and becomes thinner. When your diaphragm tenses, you take shallower breaths, which leads to rushed, clipped speech.
Wait, really? So his physical reaction to the embarrassment actually makes him worse at speaking?
It makes him significantly harder to understand. His confidence plummets. He shrinks inward. He probably looks down at the floor, directing his voice away from the cashier.
Oh, man, yeah.
He rushes through his second attempt to speak because he just wants to escape the painful social situation as quickly as possible. The irony is staggering.
It's a trap?
The sheer terror of not being perfectly understood physiologically alters his vocal tract in a way that guarantees he won't be understood. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
He equates repeating himself with failure. The shame causes him to retreat, his physical clarity suffers, and the cycle just reinforces itself.
That is just, it's heartbreaking, really. But the source isn't showing us this scenario just to analyze Bruce's trauma. It's holding up a mirror to the mechanics of this trap so we can actually dismantle it.
Yeah, there is a way out.
The solution proposed in the text's title and highlights is a radical shift in focus. It says we need to focus on communication and, quote, prioritizing being understood over sounding perfect. It demands we move our energy away from the aesthetic and toward the functional.
It's an active reallocation of that cognitive load we talked about earlier.
So what does this all mean? Let's move away from the sports car. Think of communication like building a bridge between two people.
Okay, a bridge.
The ultimate goal is to get the cargo from point A to point B safely, that is, being understood. It doesn't matter if the bridge isn't the most intricately decorated, perfect architectural marvel in the world, as long as the cargo arrives intact.
That's a solid analogy.
Or, to put it another way, think about accent perfectionism like a musician in a band who is utterly obsessed with making sure their guitar is perfectly in tune.
Oh, I like this one.
Yeah, so they have the most expensive tuner, they've spent hours calibrating their instrument, and when they pluck a string in isolation, the note is flawless. It is the platonic ideal of an A note.
Beautiful, crisp note.
Right. But when the concert starts, they are so focused on maintaining that flawless tuning that they completely ignore the drummer.
Oh, no.
They ignore the bassist. They end up playing their perfect notes completely off-tempo and out of rhythm with the rest of the room.
That is a phenomenal way to illustrate the disconnect. The isolated note is perfect, but the music itself is a total disaster.
Right. If you are playing perfectly in tune but completely off-beat, you aren't actually playing music. You are just making noise.
That's random noise.
The listener doesn't care about the microscopic perfection of your string tension. They care about the groove. They care about how your sound fits into the collective rhythm of the room.
Yeah, they want to dance. They don't want a physics lecture on string tension.
Exactly. So the source material is telling us that the art is in adjusting to the room, reading the audience, and getting back in rhythm rather than obsessing over a single flat note.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look closely at the specific word choice the author of the source material uses in the title. They don't call it the technique of clarity or the necessity of clarity. They call it the art of clarity.
The art.
That word elevates the concept entirely. It frames being understood not as some clumsy secondary fallback plan for people who, fail to achieve a perfect accent. It frames clarity as an active, highly skilled, and noble priority in its own right.
It's a skill you hone.
Yes, an artist is observant. They manipulate their medium to achieve a specific effect on an audience. If you are practicing the art of clarity, your medium isn't just sound. It is empathy, adaptability, and situational awareness.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't clarity fundamentally tied to pronunciation? Like, if I completely butcher my vowels or if I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable of a crucial word, the listener literally will not understand me.
Right.
The groove is ruined. So where is the actual line between necessary pronunciation and accent perfection? If clarity is an art, does practicing this art mean abandoning the anxiety of the perfect accent actually requires us to focus more intently on the true mechanics of connection, like pacing, volume, and reading the other person rather than less? Do we just stop caring about how words sound?
This raises an important question and is the exact boundary where the science of linguistics comes into play.
Uh-huh.
No, practicing the art of clarity does not mean you abandon pronunciation.
Okay, yeah.
You still have to hit the right notes, to use your musician analogy. The difference lies in a concept called acoustic accommodation.
Acoustic accommodation.
Yes. In sociolinguistics, communication accommodation theory explains how human beings naturally align their speech patterns to their conversational partners.
Oh, like mirroring.
Exactly. When two people are genuinely focused on connecting and understanding each other, they subconsciously begin to mimic each other's pacing, pitch, and syntax. They converge.
They sync up their rhythms.
Exactly. Wait, yes, they sync up. But here's the catch. Acoustic accommodation requires cognitive bandwidth.
Ah, back to the bandwidth.
Right. If you are stuck in your own head, terrified of letting your native accent slip through, you are rigidly enforcing your own vocal patterns. You refuse to accommodate. You become an immovable object in the conversation.
Because you're so focused on your own perfect notes.
Yes. Practicing the art of clarity means you relax the rigid grip on your own aesthetic presentation so that your brain can naturally engage in acoustic accommodation. You start reading the listener.
Okay.
If the store is loud, the art of clarity dictates you increase your volume and articulate consonants more sharply, regardless of what accent those consonants carry. If the person seems confused, you simplify your syntax.
Right.
You are actively sculpting your message in real time to fit the unique shape of the listener's environment.
It takes the interaction from being a solo performance where you're waiting for a grade to a collaborative jam session where you are actively working with the listener.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
So let's synthesize the takeaway here. If we apply this back to Bruce, if he had internalized the lesson of the source material and was actively prioritizing the art of clarity, his entire experience at the store changes.
The molecular structure of the interaction transforms.
Let's play it out.
Okay, so Bruce walks up knowing his only goal is a successful transfer of information, making sure the cargo crosses the bridge. He speaks. The clerk says, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?"
And what happens in his brain now?
Because Bruce is no longer operating under the delusion that he must sound like a local to be worthy of service, his amygdala does not fire.
So there is no threat response.
None.
There's no adrenaline dump. His vocal cords don't tighten.
His physiology remains totally calm. He receives that request for repetition not as a social rejection, but as vital, real-time feedback from his conversational partner.
Right. The clerk is essentially saying, the rhythm was a little off. I missed that beat.
Exactly. Bruce simply shifts into active clarity mode. He subconsciously analyzes the environment. He notices the ambient noise of the store or, he realizes he was looking down at his wallet when he spoke.
He's present in the moment.
Yes. He then makes an artistic adjustment. He makes eye contact, raises his volume slightly, slows his pace by 10%, and repeats himself with a steady, open breath.
And the message lands.
Yes, it
He
does.
successfully communicates. He prioritized being understood, and he achieved it. And because he didn't trigger that embarrassment cascade, he doesn't leave the store feeling small.
He doesn't carry a heavy, anxious cognitive load into his next interaction.
The accent is utterly irrelevant to the victory.
And that victory is reproducible anywhere in the world. The perfect accent is a fragile, rigid construct that shatters the moment you get nervous, tired, or encounter a listener with a different dialect.
It's the sports car in traffic.
Exactly. But the art of clarity is a robust, flexible toolkit. It relies on universal human mechanics, pacing, volume, eye contact, and empathy. It works in any environment, with any listener, under any circumstance.
It's deeply liberating, realizing that the thing you've been agonizing over, the polished mahogany handle on the hammer, is actually the least important part of the tool.
It really is liberating.
Let's summarize the journey of the conversation we've just been on. We started by examining the heavy, impractical burden of accent perfection, comparing it to driving a hyperfragile sports car in daily traffic.
Right.
And we broke down the immense cognitive load that kind of vanity metric demands of your brain.
We then explored the acute sting of embarrassment through Bruce's interaction at the store.
Poor Bruce.
Unpacking the evolutionary neuroscience of why we feel that social rejection and how the resulting anxiety physically sabotages our ability to speak clearly.
Finally, we discarded the pursuit of the flawless, isolated note in favor of the art of clarity. We unpacked the source material's powerful thesis that true communication lies in prioritizing being understood. We realized that this is an active, dynamic, and highly skilled art form that requires our full presence, our ability to read a room, and our willingness to adapt to the rhythm of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Which brings us directly to you, the listener. The ultimate takeaway you need to carry into the world from this text is this. Your accent doesn't matter nearly as much as your ability to connect and be understood. Your unique voice, shaped by your specific history and geography, is perfectly capable of driving the rhythm of a conversation if you just focus on the connection.
This raises an important question, though. Implementing this requires vigilance.
It's not an overnight fix.
No, intellectually understanding the neuroscience of cognitive load and acoustic accommodation is one thing, but actively overriding your amygdala's threat response in the moment is another entirely.
Yeah, that takes work.
Overcoming the Bruce mindset requires consciously, actively shifting how we measure conversational success. You have to catch yourself when that ancient alarm bell of embarrassment rings and actively remind your nervous system of your true goal.
It's a daily practice. And to help you with that practice, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over on your own, building on everything we learned from the source material today.
Okay.
The world is full of busy stores, loud trucks, thick accents, and distracted listeners. Miscommunications are a guaranteed mathematical certainty of human existence.
They absolutely are.
So the next time you are out at a store or in a high-space meeting or on a crackling phone call and someone leans in and asks you to repeat yourself, how will you react? Will you default to Bruce's embarrassment, letting the anxiety tighten your throat as you assume it's a flaw in your perfection? Or will you take a breath, look at the person across from you, and view that exact moment as a blank canvas to practice the art of clarity?